What was your first reaction when you heard about the attempted assassination on Donald Trump? Did you think that this is probably an election gimmick set up by Trump and his team in order to influence the elections? Or did you think that the Republicans had supported the gun lobby for so long, through so many school shootings, that eventually it was going to happen to one of them? Or did you think on the other side that Joe Biden, the president of the US, has been leading the left radicals to a point of violence and Donald Trump is finally going to teach them a lesson? It doesn't matter which of these reactions was yours. They all betray an erosion of empathy, an erosion of humanity and kindness in our society, and show that politically we've divided ourselves into left and right so deeply that we can no longer really feel any grief. In order to break this down, we have to first understand what happened. A 20-year-old man shot at former president and current Republican candidate Donald Trump, who was speaking at a rally at Pennsylvania. Now, loud noises were heard in the crowd. Trump was seen clutching his ear and then ducking down as the Secret Service then formed a human sort of shield around him and ushered him away from the crowd, not before he slowed them down and then shouted, "Fight, fight," with a gesture. One other person in the crowd was killed and 2 others were injured. Trump on his social media platform later said, "God bless America," and he realized what was happening. Analysis of the path of the bullet since then has shown that if Trump had not turned his head at exactly that time to address the people behind him, the bullet that grazed his ear would have hit him in the back of the head and would have been fatal. The FBI is investigating the shooter, a 20-year-old who seems, outside of this one incident, almost unremarkable. Thomas Matthew Crooks, the shooter, was a member of a local gun club. He worked at a nursing facility, and he apparently drove an hour from his home with explosives in his car for this particular event. Secret Service agents have since shot and killed Crooks, who fired at Trump. Now, authorities say that they have not determined what motivated this attempt to assassinate Trump. He is apparently a registered voter as a Republican, which means he should be on Trump's side, but he also donated $15 at one point to a liberal voter group. The FBI has not managed to identify any ideology or threatening writing or social media posts from him. He has no past cases against him, and according to public records and his classmates, he was a good student and something of a misfit in high school. The FBI has since taken over that investigation and believes that he was acting alone, so he was not part of any group. And the shooting is being investigated as a potential act of domestic terrorism. So this 20-year-old had no particular reason. He was not a criminal before this, and he was not part of any criminal group. So what aggravated him into committing this crime? Now, we have to remember that this is not the first time the US has faced domestic terrorism in the form of an assassination. Past presidents, Abraham Lincoln, John Kennedy, also Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968. But like the New York Times points out, in all of those previous cases, the first reaction was that of shock and grief and introspection across America, and the conspiracy theories came later. In this case, though, the reactions are memes and rage and blame and even comedy. Introspection doesn't seem to be on the cards. The memes from the liberal side call it staged, sounding unsympathetic. On the right side, on the far right side, Senator Vance of Ohio, for example, claimed that the Democrats have set the stage of this attempted assassination by framing the election as a battle between democracy and fascism. Trump's own daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, shared this on her Instagram, bringing in God and painting. Joe Biden has said that we must not descend into violence, and he's asked Americans to lower the temperature on politics. But what is the problem here? If we step back and look at the fact that the event we are examining is the attempt to murder a human being, irrespective of what his political views are, we realize that we've reached a point in our political differences where this cultural polarization and political division of left and right has divided friends and family and neighbors and colleagues to a point where we can no longer hear each other. The radicalization of the internet has made it worse. The trolling, the hate, the threats that's now become part of our daily lives, where we're constantly told that we should become immune to it. Almost as if there's no way this sort of threatening can eventually turn into violence. But this sort of threatening that seeps into our minds on a daily basis will eventually lead someone to commit an act of violence on the ground. And then there's the misinformation and the polarization of our formal media that's actually creating and, in fact, encouraging ideas of hate and division instead of working towards empathy and working towards understanding, which is the job of formal media, a job that they have abdicated and given up. And of course, let's remember that political language itself has become so abrasive and aggressive and no longer has any sort of dignity and no longer has any sort of decorum. We've now reached a point where we can no longer feel empathy, we can no longer feel shock or humanity if the victim is on the other side. This is not just America. It's across the world. In the UK, in Europe, and in India. Where our reaction to events, our reaction to news, our reaction to murder, to assault, is that of, I bet they deserved it. Take, for example, our reaction when Kangana Ranaut was assaulted by a person in uniform at an airport. Many people in this country found themselves unable to feel empathy because she was on the other side of that argument. Have we reached a point now, allowing social media, allowing mainstream media, allowing politics to take advantage of our feelings to a point where we can't really feel human feelings for each other? If this is a point of introspection for America, could it be a point of introspection for us as well? Could we stop for a second and say, are we less human now than we were before we had the internet? And is there a way that we can stop and wind back? Is there a way that we can feel those feelings again, feelings of kindness, humanity, and empathy for one another?